Hey, welcome to a video that will probably not get many views because it is just some random reviews, and I'm gonna do spoilers as well, just by the way, because fuck it, why not? I don't know, let's just do it. Okay, so first up, the movie I want to talk about is Fall, which I saw, I don't know, like the other day, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit, to be honest. It is about these two girls who go up a tall tower thing, like as a climbing challenge. But then they get stuck up there, the ladder falls down and everything, and they face, death. They fight for their lives to survive and try and find a way down, or try and get help at least. And I just thought that it was really kind of like intense and fun in that kind of way, but it wasn't like the best film of all time. I definitely have to say that there were some things with it where I'm just like, okay, so this one kind of requires a twist. My first criticism I want to come up with. One of my criticisms is about something that happens at the end of the movie. It's very specific, but it bothered me very much. After the whole fight for their lives, after the whole movie kind of built up to whether or not they're going to get out alive, whether they're going to get down. By the time we actually get to the end and the one girl gets down, the final girl does get down, it's not on camera, it's not on screen, it kind of cuts. It just cuts to her being safe. And I thought it was such a weird decision. Usually in movies like these, they'll be like up the top, they'll be crying and whatever, and then down below they see police lights or something, like, and they're like, oh my god, I'm saved. And then maybe it cuts, fine. We don't have to see every detail of her getting down, I get that. But it did this weird thing where it was trying to trick us because it showed her dad driving and like trying to find her and everything. He comes up, he sees a body bag and oh my god, oh no. But then she's alive and it's like they're trying to trick us. But it was so pointless, and it really got rid of like the finally seeing her be saved moment that the whole film was building towards. Also, before that, there is a major twist in this movie for some reason. It's not a movie that needed it. It's not a movie that it's suited in. Didn't need to be there, where the other girl, not the final girl, I don't know the character's name, but one of the girls has been dead for a while. Not the whole film, but she died like, somewhat of the way through the movie. And a lot of their conversations nearing the end of the film were hallucinations for the main girl. And it was fine. I didn't see it coming. It was kind of clever, I suppose, especially the way that they integrated the stick in the shoe and the phone into her stomach so that they can get reception by pushing the whole damn body off. I didn't think of that, and that was kind of clever. I don't know. Look, it didn't need the twists, and that whole thing about her being safe off camera really bothered me for some reason. But beyond that, the rest of the movie is just like this fun kind fun? It's fun, I don't know. Just this like very intense film. If you don't like heights and stuff, obviously it's not going to be good. Didn't bother me in that kind of way, but it was definitely intense. I had fun with it, and I just spoiled the whole thing for you anyway. I did give you that warning, so don't come at me. Anyway, next up, what's the next movie I want to talk about? Speak No Evil, which is on Paramount Plus, at least here in Australia. This is a movie that I'm also about to spoil, and it's a movie that I was looking forward to since January. I've been looking forward to this movie for ages. It's a Danish film that is mostly actually in English, which surprised me. And I was really looking forward to it because it has this interesting premise about this family who goes and visits this other family for a weekend. They're just gonna hang out and everything, but then things start to get a little bit awkward between them. And the main couple, who are the visiting couple, don't quite know when to say no. They don't quite know when to leave. They don't quite know when things have crossed a line for them in terms of them feeling way too uncomfortable to continue spending time with this hosting family, which interests me a lot, especially when it comes to the kind of line about what is and isn't okay, and that's definitely interesting. And once things go down the line, because we do know this is a horror movie going in, and things start to get a little bit darker, I do understand in most cases why the visiting couple might be too intimidated to do anything. I get that. But by the end of this movie, I absolutely cannot get behind the main couple's decisions in any way whatsoever. They basically just let everything that happens happen to them. They do nothing to intervene with the situation. They to a certain extent, later down in the film, they start to get an idea of what's gonna happen to them, and they just fucking sit there. And it's not like they are physically overpowered. It's not like they are outnumbered. It's not like there weren't options that they could have at least tried. Like, that's the thing. Sure, fine, try, fail, that's okay. but they don't even try. But to be fair, I do think that some of the kind of finer details did get missed. They got lost in translation for me, because this was definitely a movie that was commenting on the cultures over there and everything, and it was definitely meant to be sort of comedic when it came to how trusting the main couple were and how they wanted to stay polite that whole time. That's kind of the whole premise behind it. But I don't know, I just couldn't really buy into it once things started to happen that were a bit too far. You know, they crossed the line for me, and I'm just like, leave, and they don't leave, and I think they are stupid. I just think they are too stupid, and I hated the movie because of it. And I also didn't even like the villain couple either, because I didn't really understand their motivations, and the whole thing, like, I like a slow burn, but the whole thing took so long to get to the point when I already had an idea that things were going to get dark, because we do know, again, this is a horror movie going in, or at least a thriller. We know going in that something's going to go wrong. And so I'm kind of over the whole charade of movies pretending like everything is okay for a little bit too long before they actually start to get to the carnage. Like, you know, I get that it's not all just about blood and guts and stuff, and that's not what I'm asking for. I'm just asking for the movie to stop pretending like I'm an idiot. I suppose. Like, I'm sick of the pretending like everything is okay when I know it's not. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense, and maybe this is a criticism of the genre overall, not just this one particular film, but I felt it more intensely here than other films for some reason. I just didn't like it. And then by the end, spoilers again, all that happens is that the hosting couple makes them strip naked, which they seem to have no issues with. Like, obviously they do. They're very upset and they're crying, but they just do it. They don't fight back in any way. They don't fight back. They don't say no. They don't do anything. They're just like, yep, okay, take my clothes off. Yep, I'm just going to go in this ditch here when they make him go. And, oh, yep, now they're throwing rocks at him, and they throw rocks and they stone them to death, which was horrible scene, well executed. And that's something else that I got to say about the whole film overall. It is well executed, and it does have some fantastic scenes of tension. There's this one scene where the hosting couple is making their kids dance in this weird routine, and the boy isn't quite doing it right. He's slightly out of rhythm or whatever, and that's like the worst possible thing that could be happening to this man at the moment, as he's just abusing this kid basically for not dancing properly. And the other, like, the visiting couple are just like, what the fuck, who cares, they're kids. It's not even like, they're not even performing for anybody. They're just like in the lounge room. It's nothing. It doesn't matter. And I thought that was actually a good scene, because it was self-aware of that, and there were lots of little good scenes of tension. I have to give some praise to this film. I didn't think it was absolutely atrocious, but I did feel like it was absolutely pointless. And the fact that they just get stoned to death at the end, and that's all that happened, like, it just felt like a massive waste of time come the end to me. I just couldn't get behind their stupid decisions. I just couldn't get behind it. It bothered me too much. I'm sorry. Usually I'm not the kind of guy that complains about that kind of thing, but it just did here. It just bothered me very much. But I don't know. I know that some people are pretty into this movie from what I've heard, and that's fine. That's fine. You can be into this movie. You can be wrong. That's okay. I don't know, it just didn't work for me, but it's frustrating because it feels like a movie that I should love. There are elements in here that I absolutely do love, a slow build of tension between characters and everything. This kind of premise really interests me. That's why I was looking forward to it so much, but it just really let me down. I feel the same about the movie Funny Games, which this movie very much heavily reminded me of, where it just felt like they didn't do much to intervene, and it was way too slow till they actually got to the point and to the events that happened. And then when they did, I didn't really care. I felt the same way about Funny Games and Speak No Evil, but yeah. That's just my opinion. Next movie. What's the next movie? Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. We got this like a month and a half late here in Australia as compared to some other countries. And I was peed. I was peed off. I was angry. I was furious. I don't know. I was pretty annoyed, but like it wasn't that big of a deal. It's no Pearl, which still has no release date here in Australia, might I add. Anyway, Bodies, 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 which you have to say it 3 times every single time, is this fun kind of whodunit mystery, murder mystery slasher sort of thing, set in a mansion with all these rich kids. And I had a hell of a fun time with this. I wasn't loving the first half because something that a lot of people complain about is that these characters are very annoying. And I did feel that, but that's not so much what bothered me. It just felt like it wasn't really going anywhere during the first half all that much for me. I don't mind spending time with characters that I don't particularly like. I think that's fine. I don't have to like the characters to care about what's going on. But this really turned me around during maybe the second act or something like that. I started to get really into this, and I think that it's hilarious for one, as it's kind of making fun of like Gen Zers and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, woke culture and all the buzzwords that they throw in there and everything. It is kind of funny in that way. But mainly, I just find it hilarious that, like, they're all freaking out to the extent that, spoilers, they begin to kill each other, and it all turns out to be for nothing, because come the end, it turns out the twist is that Pete Davidson's character, who is the person who gets killed first, died just doing like this shitty TikTok dance challenge type of thing. That one where they're like, I'm in the house and I'm in the house bored. You know that? Yeah, he's playing around with a machete, gets himself in the head and dies, or neck or whatever. And that's all. And that's all. And just from that, the rest of them all go on to just kill each other because they are all paranoid. That's just a great premise. I really, really fucking love that. And by the end, yeah, I loved this movie. Like, I liked it okay before that, but then once that happened, I loved this movie. And this is definitely going to be one that I'm going to be rewatching quite a bit, because it's just really fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, except for moments where it kind of does, and it does it well as well, actually, to be honest. There's this one scene where one of the only, like, man characters is there, and he's surrounded by a bunch of, like, teenage or 20-ish year old girls, and, like, he's not too worried. He's not too intimidated, because they're, you know, he's much bigger than them. He's much stronger than them. But you get this sense of, shit, something's about to go down. I don't know what. I don't know who's going to get hurt or killed here, but it's like something's about to go down. You know, some of them have knives and stuff. Something bad is about to happen. And you're just sitting there like cringing, like in a good way, in a way where it's like, fuck, what's about to happen? And then when the action goes down, it's like, damn, that actually made me care a surprising amount for such a silly film, ultimately. Like, this is a pretty silly film that doesn't take itself too seriously for the most part. But yeah, I don't know. I really love it, to be honest. I think Bodies, Bodies, Bodies might be one of the best horror movies of the year. Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot that's come out this year. You know, with X, with, what else has come out? I don't know. I'm totally blanking. But there's been a lot of good horror movies this year. So, yeah. My end of the year best movies thing is gonna be hard to pull together, I would say. There's a lot of options there. Hey, so this is a different day than I'm filming this, but I saw some more movies since shooting the first half of this video, so I thought that I would just add a few more on here at the end. So, I'm gonna spoil this, but I saw Don't Worry Darling. That's your spoiler warning for that. So, the whole thing is like a Matrix-esque, you know, kind of Inception, Black Mirror type of situation. It's a simulation, and I think that that is so cool. I really do love that concept, especially as it's shrouded in the idyllic 1950s sort of aesthetic, but in this really creepy way. I honestly don't see what everybody's problem with Don't Worry Darling is. I actually gave this a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I absolutely loved this movie. Now, I do have to admit there are some issues I have with it. Like, when it comes to the twist, right? There are some inconsistencies, I guess. What's up with the plane? You know, if this whole thing is a simulation, then it doesn't make sense for this random plane to be there. That had to have been programmed in on purpose. Otherwise, it doesn't really make that much sense. And then, during that plane crash scene, it also makes me ask certain things about, like, the bus driver, for example. Is he actually a man who is working a job within this simulation world and knows that everything is a simulation? If so, why is he the sucker that has to work? Why did he agree to that? Does he get extra pay? Or is the bus driver actually AI and is not actually a person at all? The only thing that makes me think that it definitely is a person is that he completely freaks out when the main character veers off track. So, I don't know. It does leave you with questions, but not nearly enough that just made me, like, completely dislike the thing. I guess other people scrutinize every single detail and they're like, why this, why that? But I'm just like, I like the story overall, and I just thought it was really well done overall. So I don't really care about every single detail ever, if that makes any sense. I thought Don't Worry Darling was really riveting. I liked its, like, feminist kind of point of view, and I liked just everything that it did, really. I thought it was fantastic. Obviously, Florence Pugh was great and stuff, but the one thing I wanted to talk about as well is that I don't really see what everybody's problem with Harry Styles in this movie was either. I don't know. I thought he did fine. I did think it was interesting that he didn't have an American accent like everybody else. He kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in that kind of way, because it's like everybody else is in that idyllic 1950s Americana type of thing, and then there's just this British dude. But, you know, if he did have an accent, an American accent, he probably would have, you know, done worse acting wise or whatever. So I don't know, it was fine. But yeah, I really loved the concept of these men putting these women unknowingly, for the most part, in this simulation. And like, because it's interesting when it comes to Harry Styles' character, you understand why he did it in a certain way, even though it's obviously a despicable thing to do. And I think that that is what makes a great villain, or villains in this case, because yeah, he just wanted like this perfect life or whatever, but obviously you can't just pick and choose every fucking aspect of life and put people in there against their will, or at least against their knowledge, pretty much stealing Florence Pugh's character's life away from her entirely. And I just thought that that was really dark. This was a much darker film than I was expecting it to be. And I honestly could have watched this movie for hours and hours and hours. I know it was a slow burn. I know that it was like this mystery that we maybe could have predicted at least a little bit in terms of knowing somewhat what direction it was going to go in. But by the time that the twist came, I was like, I don't know, I was really impressed. I thought Don't Worry Darling was a banger of a movie. I loved it a lot, and I don't really see what everybody's been having issues with. Maybe they got skewed by all the off-camera drama and all that shit, but I don't care about that. I don't know. Shia LaBeouf, Olivia Wilde, spinning and stuff. I don't give a shit. I know this is old news by this point, but like, even when it was like completely brand new, I do not give a single shit about that stuff. I don't know. Also, briefly, just wanted to say that I also watched the new Hellraiser movie last night. And I don't know, it was boring. Sorry, Hellraiser fans. I've never been a fan of this franchise. I don't like the kind of cerebral type of storytelling that it does here with all the... I'm not interested in the Cenobites or why they do what they do. I don't really give a shit. The puzzle box thing doesn't make that much sense to me, where it's like you do the puzzle and then you get punished for it, but you don't even know what the puzzle box is yet, so it's like, committing to... it's not like Saw, where like you do something wrong and you get punished for it. You knowingly do something wrong in a world that Jigsaw exists in. You're kind of asking for it at that point. You just do a puzzle box in this world though, and you get tortured or whatever. I don't know. I stopped paying attention, admittedly. I just I didn't like this movie very much at all. I didn't care about the characters. I thought it was boring. Sorry if you loved this movie. I didn't so much. I also just briefly wanted to talk about Dahmer as well, or Monster, the Dahmer story, whatever the fuck it's called. I thought that this show was absolutely incredible. Honestly, everything about it, like, it was so dark and it was so upsetting. Maybe not as upsetting as everybody was making it out to be, like I could stomach it, but the fact that it was all based on a true story just made it so much worse. And I really liked the complicated kind of morals of watching the show to begin with, because in the final episode, okay, Dahmer receives a letter from one of his fans, and these people always get these weird fucking fans anyway, and he says, you're like Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger now, meaning that Dahmer has now been immortalized, and even if he dies, which, we know that he does, even if he dies, he's still been immortalized forever, and we will still know his name, years down the line, which we still do, and we're still making and watching media about him, which feels really wrong. It's like he is a celebrity. It's like he is this icon that we should know of, and he doesn't deserve that. And I find that really, really interesting and sickening and stuff. I really loved the pacing of this show, being that it showed the horrible, horrible shit that he did all the way throughout. And then the second half of the series veers off into explaining even more so how this affected the victims, and not just the people who got killed. When I say victims, I mean the families of the people who got killed and all that stuff. They are all victims too. And I just thought that that was a really interesting way to do it, a much more personal way to show the effects that Dahmer had on all of these people. And I really loved that, especially when it came to Dahmer's dad and how he was desperately trying to seek for a reason as to why he was the way he was and blaming himself and all this stuff. I found that really emotional. The episode with Tony, the deaf guy, heartbreaking, probably the best episode of the series, or the first one. I'm quite a big fan of the first episode of the series as well. Just that really slow tension building, just horrible situation that the guy finds himself in. I found that really, really riveting as well. I didn't know where it was going to end. And then when he escapes and Dahmer gets caught in the first episode, I'm like, what is this show going to be about now? Obviously, then things go out of order, and I really loved the pacing and the decision there as to how they tell the story. It could have been so much more basic than that, but they went in a really interesting way with it. I also have to say that Dahmer does not feel like a Ryan Murphy TV show at all. If you don't know, he's the guy who does American Horror Story, and he did Ratched last year or the year before. And this doesn't feel like that. It's not overly dramatized or anything like that. It's very bleak and very serious and very dour and very, very, very well done. It's honestly probably one of the best TV shows that I've ever seen, at least a mini series or whatever. And you know, obviously Evan Peters does great and everything as the main character of Dahmer, as just this creep, and sometimes it makes you feel like you don't even like understand him, but then at other times you're like, huh, okay, so he's lonely, he's fucked up, he's drunk, and then he kills somebody, and you're like, yeah, okay, nah, all sympathy just went out the window. And not that you ever feel sympathetic for him, except one thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is at the very end of the series. So we see, and this is all based on a true story, so obviously this happened, Dahmer gets killed in prison by a fellow prisoner who just beats him to death. And during this, the show kind of painted this as an act of heroism, which to an extent, he had to be taken out, sort of. And I do kind of understand that. He deserved to be taken out at the very least. But I'm also watching this guy who's also a prisoner, who's trying to be a better person, and he's conflicted because he can't deal with what Dahmer has done. He can't just live with himself knowing that this guy who did all of these things, killed this 14-year-old kid and stuff, is just going by fine, relatively fine. He's in prison, but like, you know, we can see that he's fairly happy there, which... Does he deserve to be? You know, do you believe in rehabilitation? Is somebody like that way too far gone? Yeah, probably. But I did, though, have an issue with this guy just killing Dahmer, because you can't just choose who lives and dies. That's, if he was going to get killed, it should have been done through the justice system. But then again, the whole show showed that the justice system was also pretty fucked. So maybe I take that all back. I don't know. I don't know. It's really complicated. Like, especially when it comes to how, you know, Dahmer pretty much terrorized a certain community, you know, like a lot of black people and stuff, and other races, the poorer kind of communities and everything are the people that he targeted, I guess, because they were around him, because he was also kind of poor, and they were maybe the easier targets and all that stuff. And so there's definitely kind of an issue there, especially when it comes to the police corruption and the not listening to people and all that shit. The incompetence of the police is infinitely frustrating in this show, and it can really show you just how much of a leg up Dahmer could have just by being a white guy, basically, and how infuriating that can definitely be. I definitely thought that was an interesting approach that I had never really considered before when I thought about this guy who just killed people. I just thought he's some freak and he killed people. I don't know. But there's so much more to it. You know, there's so much more to how and why he got away with everything that he did. And there's also so much to whether or not he regretted it, whether or not he really was changing his mind and finding God when he was in prison and stuff, which I don't believe for a second. And there's just so many complicated feelings you have about Dahmer, the person, the character in this show, and especially other characters like his dad and stuff who, yeah, in the end of the show, he was basically saying, I used to have these feelings too. I took a bomb to school or whatever, which is obviously a really fucking shit thing to do as well, but I don't think the dad was really in the same vein as Dahmer in any way whatsoever. I also find it interesting that even though the brother character just disappeared for the rest of the series, like he briefly showed up from the start and then wasn't in it ever again, but Dahmer had a brother. And that makes me question things even more, because it's like, if the brother turned out to be just this normal guy, but Dahmer turned out to be fucking Jeffrey Dahmer, what happened? Like, that is a really fascinating question. And yeah, we're probably never really going to know the answer to that. But yeah, as the show goes, it's very disturbing. And I liked it a lot. Does that make me fucked up? Maybe. But at the same time, I feel conflicted about even having watched it, because Dahmer doesn't deserve this fucking platform, right? But to be fair, the show did go out of its way to show the victim's side and the normal, real people's side and their opinions and what happened to their lives in the repercussions of everything that happened. And I really do appreciate that. I think that this took a way more sympathetic light than it could have. It could have just been very exploitative, but I actually, for the most part, don't think that this show is exploitative. I think that it had to show the horrible shit he did first for us to really understand the context of everything and for us to really hate Dahmer as a person, because fuck you do hate him in this show, like, and you don't, like, he doesn't even, like, there's no moral compass where I don't think he regrets it. I don't think he even understands why it was wrong. But then again, he talks about how he thinks he deserves to die and stuff. It's weird, man. His mentality is just so not normal. And so it's hard to kind of grasp who he was, I guess. But maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should be focusing on the victims more, you know? Yeah. It's just a really interesting show, and it definitely brings up interesting like conversations and all that stuff about it. Yeah. I was a really, really big fan of Dahmer, and I hugely recommend it, even though I've spoiled a bunch of shit here. It's not really a show about spoilers. It's not about twists and turns. It's about this slow, just disturbing path that this guy took. What was also interesting is that he killed somebody, like the first person that he killed, and then he didn't kill anybody else for 9 years, I believe it was. What compelled him to not for 9 years and then just like jump back into it and kill however many people it was, like 20 odd people, 30, whatever it was. I don't remember the specific number. I also found it really interesting how other killers like John Wayne Gacy were apparently around at the exact same time as Dahmer, and you often forget about that context, and you kind of forget that, you know, they sort of knew a bit about each other. They existed in the same time and place and everything, and how that's really disturbing to think about. What a fucked up time that kind of would have been and everything. But it did make me think about something really interesting. So when Dahmer is watching John Wayne Gacy on the TV, they mention that it was 1978 that Gacy got caught and everybody kind of found out. And I'm just like, what came out around then, movie-wise? Halloween came out that year. And then Friday the 13th came out 2 years later. Nightmare on Elm Street came out 4 years after that. And like a disturbing kind of correlation that I've just been thinking about since hearing that is that, are people like these the reason that horror movies became so famous around the 80s? And everything like that? Are people like these the inspiration for that stuff? And if so, isn't that fucked up? Especially since I like a lot of these kinds of movies. I find that particularly disturbing to think about. And I also find it really interesting, like I said, that yeah, these people did exist in the same kind of time, and they did know a bit about each other. These horrible icons. That's basically what they are to this day. They are unfortunately icons, even though they don't deserve to be. But you do forget that they existed within the same time. They existed. They were real people. And yeah, they didn't actually interact, but they did, you know, they were aware of each other. And that's just kind of makes it a little bit more disturbing as well. I don't know. But I guess that's about all that I have to say for now. So I'm gonna cut to Past Me now for the outro. Before you go, please do the things. That's all that I have to say, and I'm gonna skedaddle. So goodbye.